welcome to On the Couch, Conversations with Brenda Porter. Today's guest is Rob Jerome. He's a multidisciplined artist with over 46 years of experience in the visual arts, music, dance, theater, writing, and poetry. He believes creativity is our true nature and does all he can to share that philosophy with others. Welcome, Rob Jerome.
Thank you, Brenda. It's an honor to be here with you.
I have had the privilege of having you design some of our flyers and posters, postcards for our shows. And I've had people say, "Who did that? What wonderful work." So tell us a little bit about your work as a graphic designer, where you started, how you began, and when you started doing theater. Just tell us all about it.
Actually, I've been working professionally in the visual arts field for about 46 years now, I suppose. I started out at an early age, at 14 years old, doing portraits and caricatures at an amusement park, Six Flags, that is. And I have been doing some form of visual art ever since. I went on from that that job to do other graphics around the city, most particularly working as a graphic designer for a few of the theater companies that were in existence back in the 70s, primarily with the original Just Us Theater Company when it was connected with Theater of the Stars, and also did costume design for them. Now, simultaneously, I had started dabbling in theater. Um, when I worked at the World of Sid and Marty Krofft of H.R. Puffin fame, I chose to move from doing portraits and caricatures to audition for their musical review. And it was the first time I was really on stage. I loved it. I loved it. I had only made an attempt at performing a few times in my life prior to that, but I saw these kids having a good time, and I said I can do that too. I spent my time tap dancing on a piece of plywood in my grandmother's basement, and I just figured I had it all. And I guess I guess the naivete of youth and pluckiness got me the job. From that, I changed my major at Georgia State, which was in graphic design, to theater for a brief moment,
Really?
and spent some time studying theater, mime under Mealy K of Company K. Um, Harriet Bass for drama and Mary Nell Santa Croce, and also with Joan Lewis over at Clark. Uh, I learned a lot about production, what it takes to rehearse for a show, what it takes to actually do a job as an actor, working in that capacity. And at a certain point, I decided that Atlanta just was not the place for me to be. There didn't seem to be a lot of opportunities in the late 70s for me to actually get a good foot in the door, particularly for, well, I got to be honest, for people of African American descent. There weren't a lot of opportunities for us. And I decided it would be wise for me to move to New York, which was the mecca of the arts and still is, to see what I could do when I got there. Um, my first area of concentration when I moved to New York was in the field of graphics. I took on a part-time job working for a market research company just to make ends meet. But I found out that the art director and manager of the graphics department was moving back to London, and decided that I had what it took to go ahead and apply for that job. Um, it was basically a management job and making sure that the books for the department were kept in order. But what I was also bringing to the table were my skills as a paste up artist, doing basic layouts and paste up. They did a lot of work by hand at that time. And yes, I worked with some people that were much older than I, but I learned a lot from them. I went on from working in a clerical capacity to actually becoming the manager of that department, and eventually being promoted to the position of director of graphic services. That position lasted, I guess, for about 6 or 7 years. And after making an effort to bring computer graphics, which was this new thing at that time, into the department. I was able to get some few basic things done, but I found that the budget was not going to allow me to really make the steps I wanted to take. So I moved on to work for a company that specialized in computer graphics at that time. And that was the beginning of a career that really exploded. We were on the forefront of doing design digitally. We were working for Fortune 500 companies, working under very, very tight, heavy deadlines. I mean, overnight deadlines for doing full-fledged presentations. It was the greed era, and everyone was selling everybody else's money. And I was responsible for doing design work for the presentations that they would give in order to do that. Many a week, I was working in excess of 70 to 80 hours. And I did that consistently over a 12, 13, 14-year period. Finally, like kind of burnt out in 1996 and decided it was time for me to bring my butt back home to Atlanta. And since then, I have been working as a freelance graphic designer and doing some performance intermittently over the past 25, 26 years. I've had the opportunity to work with a few local theater companies, yours as one of them in particular. I have also been assistant director of a senior theater group that you also work with, the Darnell Players. I've had an opportunity to sing in jazz clubs with the Edwin Williams experience and Jazz Matters. I've I've really been able to delve into all of my interest in the past 26 years, which has been a wonderful experience for me. It's been an adventure, a lot of growth and renewal and renaissance, as I like to say. And not to really digress, but as a child, I was nurtured to be a Renaissance man. My father said, "Forget all that stuff about jack of all trades and master of none. There are people called Renaissance men who do it all. As long as you're working in the creative arts, you're going to enjoy yourself. Learn it all and do it all." And I stuck to that. And little did I know at that time, because I hadn't taken French yet, that Renaissance also meant rebirth. And since I am constantly reinventing myself like a phoenix, I guess that's really makes me a Renaissance man. I'm always exploring, looking at new opportunities and new things to do.
Was your father an artist?
Yes. My father was a visual artist. He painted. He was also a musician, played saxophone. That
Oh,
thus my interest in the saxophone as a child, and I mean to this day I still play sax. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize you started at 14.
Yeah, that was
I didn't even know they hired people
they
at
weren't
14.
supposed to.
Oh.
I didn't tell the truth.
So you were acting even then.
Well, yeah, I guess I was, and I guess I did a pretty good job of it too.
Wow.
Yeah, but I was one of those kids who wasn't enjoying high school, and I was trying to speed my life up. I went to summer school every year so I could get out a year early. I wanted to get a job as soon as I could so I could, afford my books and materials when I got to college, and just saved up a lot of money doing that. And it was quite lucrative too. I mean, I would walk out of the amusement park and back in 1975 with over $100 in my pocket for the portraits I was doing.
Hmm.
And that was nothing to scoff at in 1975. You know, you might be able to buy a cup of coffee now with that, but
You also teach.
I do. I do. I actually have been, over the past 25 years, personally following a spiritual path to higher creativity. Spiritual, not religious. Uh, understanding that each of us has a creative force within us that we can connect with at all times. Now, when I say creativity, I'm not necessarily speaking of artistic creativity. We're meant to be creative. We're meant to think of doing things in different and better ways. And as long as we connect with that idea and that spirit within us, we can live lives that become a work of art. And if we look at our lives as a work of art, we will be able to enjoy it and reap rewards. And that's basically what I share. I started out following Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, and have learned from that process some things that worked for me, not only with regard to renewing of my creative spirit and renewing dreams that I'd put on the shelf, but understanding that when I share that my own connection with my creative spirit grows exponentially. And the more people that I share that with, the more powerful my own creative spirit becomes. So I offer both group sessions and individualized coaching with relation to developing a relationship with your creative spirit.
How has the pandemic affected your artwork?
Well, now, I'd have to say that my freelance assignments have not been frequent within the past year. Um, Not to say that I was ever like totally busy as I was in New York with regard to the amount of work I was doing freelance wise, but uh, gaining freelance assignments has been an interesting thing over the past year or so. I don't know whether budgets have been restricted, probably have been based on the financial situations that arose from COVID-19. But in addition to that, with the way that our world has changed already, a lot of people are doing things differently now when it comes to doing visual art for communication purposes. And more so, I'd have to say within the past year, it seems as though people are more gravitating towards doing a lot of things for themselves now instead of hiring artists to do it. The other thing is that there's a competition that we have now with artists from overseas that offer their services via services like Fiverr, or well, there are a couple of platforms where people can go on searching for different services, and they are able to get services such as a logo design or a portrait done or a page layout done for a minimal amount of money. And the American artist is competing with that market as well.
Mm.
The fact that the world has become so small because of our connection digitally. It's made it easier for people to purchase services out of the country, and that's kind of at the jeopardy of the American artists getting the work here. And of course, the reasoning behind them hiring those other sites is because it costs less. It's a bottom line issue right there. I don't think that holds true in acting, though. There's a different situation that goes on in acting. And I know that as of recent, there's been a lot of talk about, say, for instance, British actors taking roles that American actors have not been considered for, in particular. And I don't really know what to say about that situation. As my directorial mind says, you hire the best person for the part. And if a British actor or a Spanish actor or an Italian actor were better for the part, that's who I would choose. Uh, However, the question is, did we really look at who we have, on land here in America before we did that? The two sides to that coin, I guess.
So I noticed behind you, you have some of your work.
Yes, yes. So I've got a mix of things back here. Some of them are illustrations for the book that I'm working on. I told you about the coaching that I do. I have been working on a book of inspirational messages to coincide with the process that I coach people on. And basically, I have a 365-day message collection that I've written that I'm currently editing. Each of the messages has an illustration that accompanies it. And it has been quite a joy to work on for the past 2.5 years. I'm just at the point now, though, where it's pulling it together and organizing it and doing an index and making sure that everything is in order and finding the right editor for the job right now, too. Because you know me, I don't want a half step. I want it to be a full size 12 by 12 full color coffee table book, hardbound. I don't want some little, paperback that you have to strain to look at. And I want people to be able to appreciate the artwork as well. So, I'm getting all the ducks in a row for that one right now.
Fabulous. So I have a question about your work with theaters.
Yeah.
How do you, as a graphic artist, for anybody who wants to begin to design for theater,
Mhm.
how do you go about coming up with your concepts, your colors, your fonts, your everything for putting together a poster?
Well, a part of that would be what I do for any graphic design project. And that is to become as familiar as you can with the material that you're creating the artwork to support. Now, when we're talking about with theater, I either, if I have the luxury of time, will read the complete play or at least get a synopsis in my head and find out about key points in the play or key characters, talk with the director about what their concept is for, or what they would like to see visually to represent the play, for instance, whether they want to go abstract or whether they don't want to go literal. I like to include illustration as part of my design for advertising a play, mainly because I feel that illustrations grab attention. However, an illustration may not always be appropriate for the project itself, particularly if you're talking about a project that will be long running. If you do an illustration, you may not necessarily want to design a picture that has um, a definite photographic representation of the actor who is the lead, because that may change if the show runs for 5 years. So that's something to keep in mind. But again, becoming familiar with the material, becoming familiar with the mood of the piece, perhaps the time that it takes place. Is it a period piece? Is it a modern piece? A contemporary, rather? Does it take place in the future? Is it techno? Is it art deco? All of these things are things that run through my head when I'm working on the design for a show, or rather for the graphics that advertise the show. I do think that it's important that I stay in communication with my point of contact with the client. Typically, that's the director or producer, and they will help me um, work on concepts rather through conversation that suit the project itself. I typically will develop or decide upon fonts and colors based on the mood of the piece that I want to convey. Uh, there's a certain amount of color theory that goes into that. Say, for instance, your cool colors will, express calm and peace. Your warm colors, such as red, may express lively or conflict in some way sometimes. That's just a basic idea, and these are graphic design rules that I'm referring to right there. However, the main thing is to develop something that evokes the spirit of the play itself. And that can be a multiple step process where I typically will come up with some basic designs to get the conversation started. I pass that on to the client. We take a look at it together and discuss what they like, what they'd like to see differently, what they think may not work. And then I go back and do a comprehensive design that includes the ideas that we've discussed and agreed upon. If that comprehensive design is approved, then we're ready to do the final work and get it ready for printing or advertising online.
So, what would you say to a director or a producer out there that's listening to us today,
Hmm.
um, that helps to make your job easier, or things that typically they do that make it difficult for you to do your job?
Hmm. Okay, now we can talk about different types of projects here too.
Okay.
Okay, if we're only talking about the identity graphics for the production, meaning the main splash graphic that you see everywhere, that the branding for the production itself, the process that I just described to you is probably the best way to go. There's an initial meeting where you talk about what, what the concept is that the director has in mind, what they'd like to communicate. This play is about. This play has a certain amount of characters. It might be nice to include those characters in a picture, or maybe include the setting that it takes place in the picture. Those type of things work for that type of design. Now, if we're talking about a full out design project that includes not only the identity graphics, but also doing the layout for all the ads and the layout for the program and any other print media or communication online. The thing to make it easy for the designer is to make sure, if at all possible, to be as organized with the text that must be communicated prior to handing it over to the designer. Now, that's not always possible, but text is the most complex area of the proofing and approval stage with these materials. Uh, if that text can be as close to complete as it could possibly be before it's handed to the designer basically can work with that text, copying it from, say, for instance, a Word document or some other text document, and flowing it into a graphic layout that they've already done. That way, if you've had somebody else do your proofreading and your editing and all of that up front, you don't have to worry so much about um, correcting typos or editing content, because that's already taken place before you've handed it to a designer.
Right.
That is the most organized that I think the client can be prior to handing it over to somebody to do the layout. The layout process is basically in the hands of the designer themselves. They come up with the concept for the layout of the book, for the layout of the ad, the visual. But knowing that your text content is in order is the biggest help you can give a designer when they're working for you. And it will help save you some time, which equates to saving you some dollars and cents when it comes to that bill coming back with revisions cost on it.
That's a very good piece of information for folks to know.
Yeah, because as you probably know, revisions that are that are caused because the artist made an error are not billed to the client. But if the client decides to change or revise or has material that could have been proofed better before they turn it in, that adds to the initial estimate on the job, which usually is based on an amount of time. I bill by time, just like a lawyer does. Every time I work on a project, the moment I sit down, that clock starts, and the moment I stand up, the clock stops. Every time a client provides me with a change, when I start working on that change, the clock starts. And when I finish working on that change, the clock stops. Those minutes or hours equate into dollars.
So, what are some of your favorite designs that you have done? Some that you're most proud of?
Let's see, I won the SIGGRAPH Computer Graphics Award in 1983 for an illustration I did for Wired magazine. I'm proud of that. Uh, um, I think my favorite theatrical graphic that I ever worked on was the poster for the show that I starred in. At Impact Theater, Heidi Heidi Ho Cab Calloway. That's my favorite because it was a show that I was doing the lead in. My favorites are actually the work that I'm doing on my project right now, because I think that that's the closest to my heart and the things that I've always desired to do. And that is to focus, concentrate more on illustration to communicate messages rather than relying upon a lot of text. I feel that a picture, of course, speaks a million words. And being skilled at being a visual artist and a designer, I feel that that's, as far as my visual art skills go, that's my niche of being able to communicate visually. And I love it. I love it. It brings joy to me to create visual art. It brings joy to me to create art simply for art's sake, for that matter, too. Not saying that I am a traditional fine artist, because my palette and my easel are really my computer, but I use the tools to do the same type of work that a traditional oil painter or watercolorist does.
So what is the difference between doing the work by hand and doing it by computer?
The lines are being blurred more and more as technology improves. Nowadays, there isn't as much difference as there used to be. With the advent of being able to draw and paint on tablets, with a feel that you're actually working on a piece of paper or using a brush, has really opened it up for the traditional artists to be able to produce work that is very similar to what they did on paper or canvas with a pencil, a pen, or a paintbrush. And there are improvements happening every minute with regard to the technology. As a matter of fact, I am working actually at one of the things that I do is I'm on a review committee for Adobe software with Photoshop. And there are artists from all over the world. We get together every 2 weeks to discuss some of the innovations in a pre-release version of the product, where they keep adding new features for us to test out. And being given the opportunity to be on the forefront with that has been really a blessing too. We're able to test out features that artists who are working in production right now just don't have their hands on yet.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've asked this question a lot with my theater artists about how the racial tensions have affected their work. And I wonder, as a visual artist, is there the same kind of effect that happens to be with the performing artist?
Well, no, I'll put it this way, and this is, of course, my opinion, but you can't be a POC or a Black man or Black woman living in America without it affecting your art in some way or the other, affecting your life in some way or the other. Now, from a personal viewpoint, um, the past year has been tough for me to keep myself focused creatively. My art was affected by current events, by the fear of the unknown, not knowing whether we're safe health-wise, or whether it's safe for us to go out of the house just as a person of color, whether our country is being led by the appropriate people. All of those things can weigh heavily on, and it's a mental health issue when you think about it. I mean, it's traumatic. It's traumatic. And you can't help but think that your creativity will suffer from that. Some people more so than others. I think depending upon how empathetic a person is, could affect the degree to which it affects them. But this is, it's an issue that really has affected us much longer than just the past year. I mean, when you look at the fact that we have as people of color, dealt with rising above the odds in order to express ourselves historically. We've got quite a legacy uh, that we're standing on that should give us the strength to move forward. But when you're going through it, when you're in the middle of it, one must really connect with their understanding of the value of their own work, what they desire to do, how they can improve the situation personally, or what can they contribute to improve the situation personally. And for me, that has been the impetus to stay active and open to being able to do my work. I mean, I had some hard times. I did. There were days when I just could not find the energy to even think about doing anything creatively. It took a lot of work. I'm glad that I'm on the other side of that now, though.
I want to talk a little bit about your performing. You actually changed your major for a while, you said.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
interesting.
I was so excited about theater at that year. I just said, okay, well, I'm this is my money, and these teachers in this visual arts department don't know as much as I do. So I might as well just, spend my money on some drama classes instead. Again, the naivete of youth, okay? Um, and I spent a year working in studying theater, just really delving into it. It was great because at that age, you're soaking up a lot. We still have that sponge quality when we're that young. And the things that you learn and the opportunities that you have will inform and affect the work that you do for the rest of your life. I think it's one of the greatest things I could have done for myself, being Renaissance minded, wanting to be well rounded in all of the lively arts. And it also informed my knowledge about what it takes to do different facets of theater, aside from being a performer, but understanding what goes on behind the scenes and understanding what it really takes to put on a production. It helped me greatly. Helped me greatly. And being involved in all the different areas at an early age was really, really a wonderful experience to have.
Now, do you want to do more theater?
Yeah, but I want to do a lot of things. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up. But yeah, I do want to do more theater. I think in the I'd say the coming days, right now, I'm probably going to focus more so because this is just where my interests are right now, in doing intimate theater pieces, if not just similar to jazz sets, where I'm perhaps performing a canon of songs by a particular composer and perhaps talking about their lives, or doing a collection of poetry, say for instance by Paul Lawrence Dunbar or Langston Hughes, and the evening with the writer type of thing. As a matter of fact, in July, I was called to find out if I'd be willing to do Cab Calloway again for the Renaissance Follies, and it will be at the Plaza Theater starting on July 18th. It's probably going to run for 3 months, according to what he was saying. And basically, I'll be part of a collection of artists who are taking on the personas of different artists that came before us. Cab Calloway, I feel, was the entertainer that's really deeply influenced my own performance style. I am not an imitator of him. I'm not an imitation of him, but his spirit infuses a lot of the things I do when I'm on stage, you know. And to be able to present his music and to make an effort to share his spirit with a live audience is a lot of fun for me.
So, what advice would you give to your younger self, knowing where you are today?
To thine own self be true. Learn not to listen to others. Learn to listen to that which you know is true, which is that small voice inside of you that says that you are worthy and that you have something to give the world. and don't let anybody get between you and that voice.
What an excellent piece of advice. Thank you.
I think it's very important that our youth, at those times when it doesn't seem as though anyone else is encouraging them, to know that the encouragement can come from within just as well, if we learn to turn off those other voices.
Thank you, Rob Jerome, for
Thank you.
spending your time with us today. And if you are out there watching us, I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. Please tune in next time when we'll have another wonderful conversation. Meanwhile, don't forget to like us, subscribe, and to comment below.
May I make a shameless plug?
Yes.
If anyone is interested in finding out more about my workshops and my coaching that I do with relation to connecting with your creative spirit, I may be reached at brightraven1@mac.com. That's brightraven, as in nevermore, numeral 1@mac.com.
And meanwhile, keep the conversations going.